Before we get this video started, I noticed most of you are not subscribed to this channel, so be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to be up to date with my latest videos. You guys just don't get it, do you? A slightly different version of The Blessing 2 is released by Truthear, and people are going crazy over it. The Blessing 2 is a dogshit IEM. For the sake of comparison, let's say after 8 kHz, these two IEMs are identical. Since this is a multi-driver IEM after all, Super Review's clone coupler seems to boost the bass more than a standard IEC 711 coupler would. And that's only important to point out for this target comparison. Alright, so I've set up an EQ for variations to the Truthear 0 for below 6 kHz. And do you want to know how it sounds? Terrible. Let me tell you why. Firstly, the upper treble is too bright, even though it is at the same level as the variations. Because of the massive lack of energy between 1.5 and 6 kHz, the upper treble is at too high of a level. The upper treble sounds notably brighter on the variations than without the 1.5 to 6 kHz dip. This is the importance of tonal balance. You can't just look at one part of the frequency response and say, oh, it matches a target, that part must sound good. Again, these are the fundamentals of tonal balance. A difference in one region affects the other, as is clearly demonstrated by the Truthear HEXA. Anyways, the upper treble in isolation isn't nearly my biggest complaint. God, it's just so stupid, man, how people accept these crazy muddy garbage IEMs. Alright, let's go with the song example where this mud shined through a lot. There is supposed to be space around the vocalists, or separation. It is completely congested by mud. This boxy timbre is not how music is supposed to sound. Switch to the variations and the timbre is back. Vocals are notably too recessed. Honestly, I wouldn't say sub-bass itself is lacking. The variations is definitely above neutral in the sub-bass. But this congestion to the vocals is just terrible. A little bit extra sub-bass is a forgivable sin, but too much mud ruins everything else. Remember the quote from the September Harman 2013 paper? I think that's what it was. When the 2013 OE target came out, the selected filter location of 105 Hz is chosen for a very specific reason. Extending the bass shelf to higher frequencies damages the timbre of vocals and instruments whose fundamental pitches fall within that region. Getting the bass correct is a very important job. You can't just throw on treble extension and think you have a good IEM. That's not how it works. It's just unbelievably muddy and congested. Now this is what we call a real IEM. So much clarity, so dynamic, incredible fidelity. This is an actual representation of how music is supposed to sound. Music at its best. Or near that at least. I'm so disgusted. Anyone on r/headphones that is saying that this earphone is amazing or whatever, so hype, you know, new Truthear earphone. You guys need to stop being so overly accepting of garbage. And you're probably not doing this on purpose because you're just so stupid, but this is getting a bit out of hand. But it's okay though if you think about it. We're nearing the finish line. Just look around, earphones on average are getting a lot better. That's something someone pointed out to me in the Bad Guy Good Guy Audio Reviews Discord server. I was basically saying that Bad Guy Good Guy calls every IEM good for the most part. But then he brought up to me how, when HBB was growing up, most IEMs were garbage. And just thinking about it, if the Truthear HEXA released 20 years ago, how would it be? Would it be so amazing? Honestly, if it was released at the price it is being at now, probably. Because what was the best at the time? The Etymotic ER4S? Overall, I'd say this is worse than the Etymotic ER4S because of how much garbage mud this earphone has. But it would have probably done fairly well at the time. However, these excuses are not acceptable. This is not the past, this is 2022. The standards are higher now. There was no Harman Target or anything back then for earphones. The only somewhat scientific company was Etymotic. Anyways, that ramble aside, let's get back to listening. What a joke of an IEM, seriously. I'm not joking. Whenever this mud just comes up in female vocals, I start getting a gag reflex. Or having a gag reflex, I think that's the right wording. But yeah, I literally feel like throwing up listening to this earphone. And this is very common for me with muddy IEMs. It's just that the separation disappears. The spaciousness, so it feels like it's not even that they're closer to me because the earphones are in my ears and the singers sound like they're in my head, right? But it has to do with the timbre, not the sense of space necessarily. I'd say somewhere between the variations and the HEXA for sub-bass would be better, maybe slightly leaning more towards the variations. I find this slightly lacking. The power in the bass guitar is audibly lacking here. Well, Apple Music glitched and it dropped down to my old music for some reason. That happens, but whatever. The power is slightly too much now, but this is preferable over too little. People complain about male vocals on the variation, so let's listen to some male vocal songs. Sounds like the singer is in the room. It's like I can imagine his facial expressions sinking into the microphone. It's so realistic sounding. Unbelievable. Now, it does not sound like he's in a room. It sounds like he's way too close to me if he was in a room. It's a weird effect to describe. Like, I can't actually imagine him singing into a microphone because this doesn't sound like a man. It's something distorted. This is what would be called linear distortion, which is different from nonlinear distortion. It's just so aggravating. This is an aggravating earphone. Bass guitars sound like whales are farting. Can feel the power of the bass guitar now without this farting nonsense. Every song I go through, there are so many problems. Drums sound too boxy. It's like I'm not even listening to instruments. It's just noise. This is called timbral incorrectness. Yeah, you really can't feel the sub bass at all on the Truthear HEXA, but you can hear it. It doesn't have the rumble Variations has. That also has to do with the shaping. This mud is also causing what is called the downward spread of masking, where the mid bass is effectively masking the sub bass. Of course, masking is more prominent in the upward direction. Alright, that is the end of the review of the Truthear HEXA. This IEM is absolute dog shit. Do not buy it if you care about sound quality. If you got this and you think it's good, you either haven't heard better or should quit audio immediately. Peace out. I'd like to give a shout out to Minolos, Fofo, Marshadow, Vsauce4, Linux Ternal, Wadiacre, and Snivry. Thank you guys for supporting the channel. I really appreciate the support.